In a post-Osama bin Laden world, many accused members of al-Qaeda remain in the U.S. detention center at Guantanamo Bay. Joining me now to talk more about the prison and the controversy surrounding it is Morris Davis, former Chief Prosecutor with the U.S. government at Gitmo. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Now, we heard the U.S. president come out and speak the other day saying that he is planning to close this facility. How realistic do you see that happening?
Well, hopefully, he said the same thing before and hadn't followed through. So it was encouraging to hear him say what he did. He said all the right things. It's the most I've heard him say about Guantanamo since 2009. So I think it's a step in the right direction, but we need some actions to go with those words. So I'm optimistic, but cautiously optimistic.
Well, what is different now than 2 years ago when he said it before?
Well, I think one difference is, last week he was in Texas for the dedication of President Bush's library. And hopefully while he sat there, he was thinking about his own legacy. And, for 8 years now, he has said that Guantanamo is an abomination. So does he want his legacy to be that for 8 years he kept this facility open, that he's condemned throughout the process? So, there's not another election on the horizon for him. So hopefully this time he'll follow through on what he said. And yesterday when he spoke, he laid out all the right reasons for why Guantanamo is a bad idea. And I can't think of a good reason to keep it open other than just the political pandering of the far right.
You are obviously very familiar with that facility. If it is not still effective, then what is the next step? What happens to these prisoners and many other prisoners that may come down the road that are in that same category?
Well, fortunately, no one has gone to Guantanamo since 2007. So there's been about 6 years since the last prisoner got there. There were a total of 779 that were ever held there. There are 166 now. And there are 3 categories. A majority, 86, and I think the public is largely ignorant of this, that 86 people have been cleared for transfer out of Guantanamo. People we don't want to keep, we don't intend to prosecute, and we don't think are a threat, primarily Yemenis, that we were in the process of sending home. We had the underwear bomber, and that whole process came to a halt. So the low-hanging fruit for the president is to send them home. The harder group is that group of indefinite detainees, about 50 that he doesn't intend to prosecute or release, and then you've got about 30 that they intend to prosecute, and it's really a question of military commission or federal court, and I think federal court is the better option. The commissions have been a failure for the last decade.
You spoke about sending some of these folks home. Some of these countries that they're from don't want them, though.
Well, the bulk of the 86, 56 are from Yemen, and Yemen has requested their people be sent home. And it's kind of interesting because our government says we don't trust the Yemeni government to be responsible for their detainees, but that's the same Yemeni government that we said gives us consent to conduct drone strikes and kill people in the country. So if the government is competent on one hand, how can you say it's incompetent on the other? So, I think there's hope for those folks that have been cleared to get out of Guantanamo. It's got to be frustrating having spent more than a decade in prison because of your citizenship.
What is next for Guantanamo? What will be the biggest holdup in preventing the closure of this facility at this point?
Well, you're going to have some on the far right that are going to pander to fear and say that the president has sided with the terrorists rather than with the American people. But as the president laid out, this place is extraordinarily expensive. General Kelly, the commander for Southern Command, testified before Congress last month and said he needed $250 million to rehabilitate the facilities to keep Guantanamo open. It's hurt our standing with our friends and foes around the world. The law that has come out of Guantanamo has all been adverse to the government. I mean, it's just hard to imagine a good reason to keep it open, and a lot of reasons that it ought to be shut down.
All right, Morris Davis, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much for your time. We appreciate your insight.